I was just a cleaning lady at the restaurant. My boss paid me 3 months' salary to pose as his fiancée at a lavish wedding. But when the groom saw me, he turned pale because he knew exactly who I was. Welcome to cheat sheet tales where loyalty dies, lies bleed out, and the truth hits like a slap to the face. These aren't just stories. They're confessions soaked in betrayal and regret. Ever spotted a red flag when it was already too late? Say it in the comments. Let's tear into today's tale. They say life doesn't ask for your permission before throwing you a curveball. But that afternoon, standing, with my hands dripping wet in the utility sink of Grayson's bistro, I wasn't ready for one. I was scrubbing rust off a steel bucket when I heard footsteps behind me. Sharp, measured, expensive. I turned, still holding the steel wool, and saw him. Elliot Grayson, my boss, owner of the most prestigious restaurant in New Orleans. Rarely seen, always composed. I'd worked there for over a year, and we'd barely exchanged 12 words. But now he was leaning against the door frame, arms crossed like he had all the time in the world. 3 months. Salary, he said casually. Tax-free. I blinked, unsure if I'd misheard. I'm sorry, sir. What exactly are you asking me to do? He smiled, small, deliberate, unreadable. Your name is Caroline, right? Caroline Bennett. I nodded. Slowly. Well, then, Caroline Bennett, I'd like to introduce you as my fiancée. Just for one evening. The steel will drop from my fingers into the bucket. I'm sorry. What? I'll triple your monthly pay, and you'll be treated like royalty head to toe. My heart kicked against my ribs. You want me to pretend to be your fiancé? He nodded again, calm as ever. It's for a wedding of friends. He's forgotten where he came from. A little reminder might be good for him. I gave a nervous laugh. And you think I'm the woman for the job? Actually, yes. He paused, then added, with a wry smile, you're the only one who said yes. I stared at him, stunned. Wait, this isn't a joke. He shook his head. No joke. I need someone who doesn't come from his world. Someone who will make him stop and think. I clean your floors, Mr. Grayson, I whispered. I don't even own a dress. You'd be surprised, he said softly. There's more to you than you think. I wanted to say, no, I should have, but something tugged at me like a whisper in my bones. Maybe it was the way he said it, or maybe it was the flicker of something familiar buried deep inside me. Something I hadn't touched in years. I had spent 10 years wondering who I really was. A woman with no past, no memories, only a name a kind doctor gave me. Maybe this wedding wasn't a job. Maybe it was a door. There was one more reason, too. Though I didn't admit it, even to myself. I wanted to be seen just once. Not as the woman who scrubbed bathrooms at dawn, but as someone anyone. I'll need help, I said quietly. I don't own a dress or shoes or anything really. He reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a sleek black card. This covers everything. Spa, salon, wardrobe. My assistant will coordinate it all. I hesitated, then took the card with trembling fingers. So, this is a paid vacation. Your full benefits starting now. He gave me one last nod and turned to leave. When the door clicked shut behind him, I sat down on the supply closet stool, still smelling of bleach and pine oil. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I caught my reflection in the small mirror behind a box of gloves. Under the worn bandana and tired eyes, I saw her. A woman I barely knew. A woman who once wore something other than sadness on her face. I leaned in and whispered to my reflection, let's find out who you used to be. 10 years ago, I woke up in a hospital bed with no name, no memory, and no one waiting at my bedside. The doctors called me Jane Doe. They said I'd been in a crash. My car had veered off the road, slammed into a tree, and caught fire. They didn't know who I was. There were no documents on me, no phone, no purse. The vehicle was a rental, signed under someone else's name. I was wearing a red dress and a wedding ring, but no one came looking. I should have died. In fact, I did, at least officially. They took me to the morgue, covered my body with a sheet. A paramedic later told me that when he tried to remove the ring from my finger, he felt a pulse, Faint, but there. He said the diamond on that ring was so large it could have paid off a student loans, but I didn't care about the diamond. I couldn't remember who gave it to me. To this day, it's the only thing I have from that life. I kept it hidden in a small velvet box beneath my mattress. My only clue, my only anchor. They tried everything. News reports, missing persons databases, fingerprint databases, nothing. Like I'd been plucked from the earth and dropped here without a trace. I didn't even know what I looked like. When they gave me a mirror, I studied my own face like it belonged to a stranger. My features were symmetrical, my hair thick and dark, but nothing sparked, not a flicker. Then Dr. Samuel Whitaker stepped in. He was the one who fought for my hospital bills, who kept me from being transferred to a state facility. A gentle-eyed man with grief behind his glasses, a widower, a father, a man who saw something in me worth saving. He gave me a name, Caroline Bennett. He said it sounded elegant, rooted, familiar, and when he told me, "You don't belong on the streets," I believed him. It was his daughter, Rachel, who helped bring me back to life. She was barely 20, bright as sunshine and stubborn as hell. She brought me clothes that didn't smell like bleach. She painted my nails while telling me about college crushes. She taught me how to use a fork again when my hand still shook. And slowly the fog began to lift. Not the memories. Those remained stubbornly locked away. But I stopped feeling like a ghost. Dr. Whitaker found me a job at Grayson's Bistro. Floor mopping, bathroom, scrubbing. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well. And best of all, it let me disappear. The place was upscale enough that no one paid attention to the cleaning crew. I moved like a shadow between the tables and candlelight. But even in that quiet, strange things began to happen. My fingers would tingle when I walked past the grand piano in the dining hall. One night I sat down and my hands moved with a confidence I couldn't explain. Music poured out of me like water. I wrote in perfect cursive without thinking. I spoke French in my sleep. Rachel used to tease me. "You write like a duchess." I would stare at the mirror in my apartment at the woman with high cheekbones and sad eyes and whisper, "Who are you?" But no answer came. After a year, I stopped asking. After 5, I convinced myself she never existed. I was just Caroline. Quiet, invisible, unimportant. I called Rachel the moment I stepped out of the staff room, still holding the black card Elliot had pressed into my hand. I hadn't even changed out of my cleaning uniform. "Hey," I whispered, voice shaking. "I need your help." She didn't ask why, just squealed. "Oh my God, you finally let him ask you out." "What?" "No, it's not like that." "Wait, what is it then?" I hesitated. "He wants me to pretend to be his fiancée for a wedding." There was a pause, then a soft, stunned exhale. "That is wildly inappropriate," she said, "and completely glamorous. I'm in. I have 3 days. I'll need 3 hours." And just like that, the transformation began. Rachel took charge like she'd been waiting her whole life to play fairy godmother. She dragged me through a whirlwind of appointments, spas where women in white robes treated me like I was royalty, nail salons that soaked the bleach out of my skin, hair consultations where stylists ran their fingers through my hair and said things like warm gold undertones and soft texture with movement. At first, I couldn't stop flinching. Every time someone touched me gently, I braced for a slap from reality. When the boutique assistants offered champagne, I almost cried, but Rachel kept me grounded. "You're not faking anything," she said firmly. "You're just walking into the version of yourself the world tried to bury." The dress was the last piece. We were in a boutique in the Garden District, surrounded by mannequins draped in silk and satin. When Rachel pulled a gown from a hidden rack, ruby red, backless, a slit that whispered scandal, I blinked at it like it was a spell. "This one," she said. "I could never." "You could, and you will." I tried it on. The fabric slid over me like water. When I stepped out of the dressing room, Rachel's eyes welled up. "You look like the woman you were always meant to be." I turned to the mirror, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't look away. The woman staring back at me had high cheekbones, soft lips, hair like honey in late afternoon sun. She stood tall, elegant, dangerous. She didn't look like someone who scrubbed toilets for a living. She looked like she belonged. That terrified me more than anything because a part of me believed it. A part of me whispered, maybe this is who you've always been. The night before the wedding I sat, alone in my apartment, the ruby gown hanging from the closet door, lit by the flicker of a candle I rarely used. Milo, curled beside me, purring like a lullaby, I ran my fingers through his fur, staring at the ceiling. What if this was more than a role? What if this was a chance? A memory waiting in the wings? What if the woman in the mirror wasn't a costume but a clue? The morning of the wedding, I sat perfectly, still on the edge of my bed, hands clenched in my lap. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Even Milo had gone, eerily still, watching me from the windowsill like he knew something was coming. When Elliot arrived, he knocked. Once, then let himself in. I stood in the hallway, already dressed in the red gown, hairpinned, makeup light but deliberate. I could feel the silk against my skin, the slits swaying with every breath. He froze when he saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he exhaled, voice low. You're stunning. I looked down, flushed. You paid for all of this. Don't sound so surprised. I paid for the dress, he murmured, stepping closer. Not the way you wear it. The wedding was held at a lavish estate just outside New Orleans. Pillars wrapped in white roses, champagne. Towers, string quartets echoing over the garden. It looked like something from a dream or a nightmare. People turned when we entered. I could feel their stares trailing across my skin. Curious, envious, confused. But not one of them looked at me like I didn't belong. Then I saw him. Nathan Bellamy, the groom. He was standing near the photographer, one arm around a woman so pristine. She looked carved from porcelain. Savannah, I assumed his fiancée. He was laughing at something the photographer said. Carefree, relaxed, until he turned, until his eyes met mine and everything stopped. His smile faltered first, then his whole expression drained color. Vanishing, jaw slackening. He stared like he was looking at a ghost or a sin. Returned to haunt him. I felt it too, a spark deep in my ribs. Not a memory. Not yet, but something older. Recognition. Elliot placed a hand on the small of my back. Nathan. Savannah. This is my fiancée, Caroline. Savannah tilted her head in polite confusion. Nathan didn't speak. He just stared. I extended a hand, calm on the outside, trembling on the inside. It's nice to meet you. He took my hand, hesitated first, then brushed his lips against my knuckles, like he'd forgotten how to function. His fingers trembled. Elliot raised a brow. You all right, man? You look like you've seen a ghost. Nathan forced a chuckle. Yeah, long night, that's all. Savannah narrowed her eyes. We're in the middle of a photo session, she said flatly and turned on her heel, dragging Nathan by the elbow, but he kept looking back over his shoulder at me. The crowd resumed their hum. Music swelled, glasses clinked, but the air had changed like a low-pressure system had settled between the trees. Elliot leaned down and whispered, Well, that went better than I expected. I forced a smile. Did it? He grinned. He looked like he saw his past crawling out of the ground. We moved through the guests. I smiled when needed, sipped champagne, played the role. To everyone else, I was mystery and poised. But inside my pulse thundered because Nathan had looked at me like a man who'd buried something he never expected to see again. And now it was staring back at him in heels and red silk. I got home just after midnight. The hallway was dim. My heels echoed against the floorboards as I unlocked the door. Milo usually greeted me, tail curled around my ankles, meowing like I'd been gone for a year. But tonight, nothing. The apartment was too still. The air hung heavy like it had been holding its breath. Milo, I called softly, stepping inside. It's just me. No sound. I set down my clutch, slipping off my shoes. My heart thudded with a strange unease. Something was wrong. Something was off. And then I saw it in the kitchen on the table. His body curled too tightly. His fur matted. A piece of cord looped cruelly around his neck. Tight, deliberate, unforgiving. His eyes were open, lifeless. I couldn't breathe. The world blurred. Sound collapsed into silence. I fell to my knees, crawling toward him. My fingers shook as I touched his side. Cold, stiff, gone. No, 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 I whispered over and over, voice cracking. Not you. I scooped him into my arms, rocking back and forth on the kitchen floor, as if warmth could undo what had been done, as if love could rewind time. Tears soaked into his fur. My breath came in broken gasps. My chest ached from the pressure of grief slamming into me like a fist. Then I noticed something else. The mattress torn. My hand flew beneath it, frantic searching. The velvet box was gone. The ring was gone. My entire past, what little of it I still held, ripped away in the same night. Murder and theft, cruelty and message. This wasn't random. This was calculated, deliberate, a message left. In fur and silence. When the phone rang, I barely had the strength to lift it. My hands were slick with tears and tremors. I pressed it to my ear. Caroline. Elliot's voice cautious. You okay? You left the reception early. I just wanted to check on you. I couldn't form words. Could barely speak. Can you come here? I choked, please. He didn't ask why. 10 minutes later, he was at my door. And the moment he saw me barefoot in the red dress, makeup smeared, holding a dead cat in my arms, he didn't say a word. He just stepped inside and pulled me into his chest, and I collapsed into him, shattering. We buried Milo in the garden behind Elliot's house, or rather he did. I couldn't bring myself to dig the earth. Couldn't touch the cold soil. Couldn't move. Elliot wrapped me in a blanket and held me on the velvet couch as the night curled tight around the windows. He made tea, lit candles, said nothing. I sat there, numb, silent, hollow. And then the smell hit me. Smoke, not from the candles. Something older burned into memory. I gasped, clutching the sides of the blanket. My breath stuttered. Glass shattering lace, brushing against bare shoulders. Red silk and screaming wind. And a voice. His voice saying my name. But it wasn't Caroline. It was my name, I whispered. Throat dry. It's not Caroline. Elliot looked up from across the room. His eyes narrowed, concerned. What did you say? I turned toward him, fingers trembling. Against my lap. It's Paulina. My name is Paulina. The memories surged forward, like a flood. I saw myself in a wedding dress. Not the red one, a different one. Ivory lace. I was standing on the steps of my parents' home, laughter ringing through the air, sunlight falling on my father's face. Nathan was there, smiling, charming, lying. We'd been married just hours when it began to unravel. That night, I found him in the den, pacing. His clothes smelled like smoke, gasoline. When I asked about it, he brushed me off. Just took care of something, he said. But then came the knock at the door. A neighbor yelling, flames already licking the porch. I ran for my parents' bedroom, screaming their names. Nathan grabbed me, pulled me back, his hand over my mouth. You don't understand, he hissed. They were going to ruin everything. He shoved me to the floor. I hit my head, blood in my mouth. Then something cold at my neck, a needle. My vision swam. I screamed. He called me hysterical. Said I needed to calm down. I kicked him, crawled to the front door, fumbled for keys. He shouted something about control and you weren't supposed to be awake. I made it to the garage. I took the car, his car, the new one he'd gifted me that morning. My hands were shaking. The brakes didn't work. I flew off the road. Everything went black. When I woke up, I didn't remember the flames. But now I did. Every detail, every word. Elliot had come closer, kneeling in front of me, his hand on my cheek. Paulina, he said gently. I believe you. Tears poured down my face. He killed them. My parents. He tried to kill me, too. We're going to make this right. I sound insane. You sound like someone who survived. I broke then, not from grief, but from the weight of being believed. For the first time in 10 years, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't crazy. I was seen. Elliot didn't speak again. He just sat there, his hand still on my face, his eyes locked on mine like an anchor, holding me steady. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, something in me settled for the first time since the fire. I wasn't Jane Doe. I wasn't Caroline. I was Paulina Caldwell, and I was going to take my life back. The next morning, I woke to the smell of dark roast coffee and the quiet murmur of Elliot's voice in the next room. I followed it like a thread, still barefoot, still wrapped in one of his oversized sweaters. He stood in the kitchen, pacing with a notepad in one hand and a phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, 36 hours of footage, every angle. Near her building. No excuses. Yes, I'll cover it. He turned and saw me, offered a short nod, then hung up. You're awake, he said gently. Good. I've already got 2 private investigators on it. One's tracking the ownership records of the rental car from your crash. The other's digging into Nathan's financial history. I blinked. How did you get all that moving so fast? I own a restaurant, he said dryly, but I also invest in people who owe me favors. He stepped closer, his voice steady. You told me the man tried to kill you twice. I'm not wasting time. I swallowed hard. Thank you. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small black box. Also, this was delivered anonymously this morning. No. Return address. I took it slowly, my fingers trembling. Inside, wrapped in a strip of satin, was the ring. The ring. The diamond my mother had given me. The one the paramedic found on my hand the night I should have died. I almost dropped it. Beneath the ribbon was a note. A single strip of paper printed in block letters. You lost again. My knees buckled. Elliot caught me before I hit the ground, wrapping his arms around me, lowering me gently to the kitchen floor. He's taunting me, I whispered. He knows. I remember. He's daring me to come for him. Good, Elliot said darkly. Let him. He has no idea who he's messing with now. The next 48 hours were a blur of quiet fury. Rachel brought over a shoe box of old photographs her father had kept. Most were damaged from time, but one of them, a photo of me sitting beneath a tree in a wedding dress, was unmistakable. I think he always suspected, she said softly. But he didn't want to overwhelm you. Dr. Whitaker, bless him, wrote a sworn statement that afternoon outlining my amnesia, my trauma, and the early physical signs of assault he had documented but never fully understood. One investigator traced financial transactions from Nathan's accounts. Hidden beneath layers of shell companies were payouts to a construction firm that had cleared my parents' home after the fire, and a wire transfer large enough to start a franchise business within weeks of the accident. Meanwhile, Elliot's security footage installed just 2 weeks earlier revealed a figure in black slipping through the garden gate the night Milo was killed. His face was obscured, but his posture, the width of his shoulders, the faint limp in the left leg. Elliot recognized him instantly. It's him, he said. It's Nathan. That moment sealed it. We had memory. We had evidence. We had motive. We just needed a courtroom. And for the first time in years, I wasn't running from the past. I was walking straight into it with fire in my blood and witnesses by my side. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Marble floors, high ceilings, polished oak benches. The kind of place built to make people feel small. But I didn't feel small anymore. I walked in wearing a navy suit Rachel helped me pick out. Modest, sharp, unshakable. Elliot sat just behind me. Dr. Whitaker on the other side. Rachel front row. I could feel the heat of their support without turning around. And Nathan, he was already seated at the defense table, tailored suit, gold cufflinks. His hair slicked back like nothing in his world had ever gone wrong. But when I stepped up to the stand, he blinked just once. The prosecution laid it out first. The fire, the unexplained crash, the forged paperwork, the financial transactions, the break-in at my apartment. The veterinarian report on Milo, the velvet box, the ring, the footage. The jury listened silent and still as each thread, connected to the next until the entire web pointed in one direction. Then it was my turn. The moment I took the oath and sat behind the microphone, the world narrowed. I looked directly at Nathan. I knew him. I began, voice quiet but clear, not just as an acquaintance, not just as the man you see in that suit. He was my husband. Gasps echoed from the gallery. Nathan didn't flinch, but the tips of his ears reened. I continued, we married 10 years ago. The wedding was beautiful. Small, intimate. My parents hosted it in our home. My hands tightened on the wooden edge of the witness stand. That night, he disappeared for an hour. When he returned, he smelled of smoke. I asked, he lied. Moments later, the house caught fire. I paused, swallowed. My parents died in that fire. Nathan told me I was hysterical. He injected me with something, locked me in a room. I escaped, took his car. The brakes had been tampered with. I crashed. I was pronounced dead. I turned my gaze to the jury, but I wasn't. I told them everything about the hospital, the amnesia, the years as Caroline, the job, the ring, the cat, all of it. He found me again, I said, and when he realized I might remember, he sent a message. I lifted the note. You lost again. He killed Milo. He broke into my apartment. He took the ring, the last piece of my identity, and used it to mock me. My voice wavered, but I held it steady. I am not a ghost. I am not a shadow. I am Paulina Caldwell, and I am done hiding. The defense barely tried. They had no alibi, no reputation of the evidence, no alternate theory. Nathan didn't testify. He didn't even look at me again. He just sat there unmoved, unimpressed, like this was a boardroom negotiation, not a reckoning. But when the verdict came, his mask cracked. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, arson, fraud, identity theft, manslaughter. The judge didn't hesitate. 35 years, she said. No possibility of parole. The gavel fell. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I breathed. For the first time in a decade, I exhaled without fear. Elliot stood, slipped his hand into mine. You did it, he whispered. I shook my head slowly. We did. As we walked out into the sun, reporters shouted. Cameras flashed. Nathan's name made headlines. But mine was finally spoken aloud. Paulina Caldwell, survivor, truth-teller, and no longer silent. People talk about closure like it's a door you get to shut and lock behind you. But it's not. It's more. Like a window you finally open after years of suffocating in stale air. That's how it felt when I walked through the iron gates of St. Augustine's Cemetery, clutching a bouquet of white lilacs and wildflowers. I hadn't been here since the funeral. I hadn't really been here at all. Not as Paulina, not as their daughter. The headstones were simple, elegant, just like they would have wanted. Joseph and Amelia Caldwell. Beloved parents, loved deeply, missed endlessly. Someone had been tending to them. The grass was trimmed, the stone clean. A small jar of fresh daisies sat beside mine. I stood there in silence for a long time, letting the wind touch my face, letting the name sink into me, not as tragedy, but as truth. I knelt, slowly, placing the flowers between the two graves, and I began to speak about everything. The fire, the betrayal, the years I lost, the years I survived. Rachel, Dr. Whitaker, Milo Elliott. I told them I was safe now that I remembered, that I finally remembered who I was and who they were. I'm sorry, I whispered, for leaving you behind, for not coming sooner, but I'm here now. And I promise I won't let what happened to find me anymore. A gust of wind moved through the trees, soft and steady. And for the first time since I woke up, nameless in that hospital room, I felt like I belonged to someone again, to something, to them, to myself. A week after the sentencing, I walked into the clerk's office with a single sheet of paper and a heart steadier than it had been in years. It was official now. Paulina Caldwell, my real name, the name that had been stolen from me, taken apart and buried beneath ash and silence. I signed the document, and stepped out into the New Orleans sun. The weight on my shoulders finally beginning to lift. For the first time, I wasn't surviving under someone else's name. I wasn't hiding in plain sight. I wasn't disappearing. I was becoming. Elliot met me outside the building with 2 iced coffees and a crooked smile. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Strange," I said, "but good." He didn't ask more. Just offered me his arm. And I took it. That afternoon I moved into his home. Not as a guest, not as a favor, but as someone who belonged there. The walls no longer echoed. The air didn't feel borrowed. I unpacked slowly, folding old t-shirts beside new clothes Rachel helped me choose. The ruby dress stayed in its garment bag, zipped up and hung in the back of the closet. I wasn't sure when I'd wear it again, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. The restaurant staff welcomed me back with wide eyes and cautious smiles. Some of them had never known I was gone. Others whispered, piecing together rumors. I didn't mind. Let them wonder. I had nothing left to hide. On the morning of my birthday, my real birthday, not the one from hospital. Paperwork. I woke to the sound of a soft meow and a gentle nudge against my cheek. I opened my eyes to find a tiny ginger kitten curled beside me, wide-eyed and purring like he'd always belonged there. I blinked, laughing through the lump in my throat. What? Elliot stood at the doorway holding a small box with a blue ribbon. "He picked you," he said. "But I thought maybe he'd like the name Milo." I scooped the kitten into my arms, pressing my face into his fur. Warm, breathing, new. "Milo too," I whispered. "King of the house." The kitten meowed in approval. Some nights the dream still came. Flashes of fire, screams in the hallway, smoke in my lungs. But I always woke up with someone beside me. Either a man whose hand never wavered or a kitten guarding my pillow like a sentinel. I used to be afraid of mirrors. Now I look into one and I see a woman who walked through fire and lived to tell the story.